Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. So today we are going to continue our chapter number 11. Before we proceed with the discussion on the chapter number 11, anyone has any doubt with respect to any of the part that we have discussed till now? Any doubt? No? Okay. So if no doubts, then let's proceed to the further discussion on the chapter number 11. So can anyone tell me what we have discussed with respect to SAE? What is SAE and what was SAE 3400? Can anyone tell me that? Anyone?
It is about the examination of prospective financial information.
Yes, very good. Examination of prospective financial information. What else we discussed?
Yes, about the assumption that
Yeah.
may happen in the future and the actions taken by the management to be taken by the management in future.
Yes. Okay, very good. What else we discussed in SAE 3400? Anyone would like to add to this? No? Okay,
There were
let me tell
certain
you.
precautions
Yes.
to be taken by the auditor, UDAIP. That is the intended use of the information and the distribution of the information and the assumptions about the estimates and hypothetical assumptions.
Yes.
And the information and the period covered.
Yes. Very good. See, so what we have discussed in SAE 3400 till now is that in SAE 3400, we have basically discussed about the prospective financial information, wherein we do an examination of the prospective financial information. Okay. Now, when I talk about examination of prospective financial information, that is where basically we look into the assumptions. We look into the forecast. Now, there were two types of assumptions that we discussed. One was best estimate assumptions. Second was hypothetical assumptions. And at that point in time, we also understood that what are the best estimate assumption and hypothetical assumptions. Okay. We then dwelled into that what kind of opinion we are issuing over here. So first was that okay, the prospective financial information is prepared as per the on the reasonable prepared on the basis of the assumptions. Now the second limited assurance or the negative statement was given on the assumptions, on the estimates that they seems like reasonable. They are not unreasonable. Basically, that was a statement that we issued. So that was the kind of opinion that we were issuing under SAE 3400 for the examination of prospective financial information. Now we also discussed that we are not vouching the accuracy of the forecast. No, we are not commenting on the accuracy of the forecast. Rather, what we are talking about here is the estimates, the assumptions. Okay. So we discussed on that assumptions, best estimate, hypothetical. Okay. On the basis of that, we understood like, okay, what procedures we need to perform similar to SA 540, similar to SA 500. Like we need to understand few things before accepting the engagement, examination procedures, management biasness. Remember, we discussed all these things and then we discussed about the report. First, prospective financial information is based on the assumptions. Number two, negative assurance kind of where we say that assumptions are not unreasonable. Okay. So that was we discussed in SAE 3400. Okay. I hope no doubt in that. If any doubt, you can ask in the chat box also or unmute yourself and you can ask. Okay. Now we are going to discuss one very important standard, that is SAE 3402. That is assurance report on controls at the service organization. We discussed this particular standard to kind of an introduction level when we were starting this particular chapter. At that point in time, we discussed what this is about, that assurance report on the controls at the service organizations. Can anyone quickly tell me the type of assurance report that we will be discussing in this? The type of assurance report that will be covered under 3402.
Type 1 and Type 2 report.
Very good. And what is type 1 and type 2? What they cover?
Type 1 is based on this is given at a specified time, and Type 2 is throughout the period. At a specified time means, for example, at a balance sheet date.
Okay, very good. Yes.
Sir, type 1 is talk about a description of that this and the control of the service organization for the specified time. For the thing is that in type 2 report, it talks about the description and control and the effectiveness of the control for the throughout the period of time.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Very good. So we are talking about the controls. We are talking about the controls which are relevant for the user entity. Okay. And that the user auditor want to rely upon, okay, for the purpose of their audit for the user entity. Now, here we will be talking about description of the systems. We will be talking about the controls which are operating at the service organization. Okay. Now the question comes is, if a particular auditor, understand that. Okay. The question here is, let's say, Mr. A is the auditor. Mr. A is the auditor of the entity called, let's say, ABC Limited. Now, ABC Limited is a service organization providing service to XYZ Limited. Okay. Now, this particular auditor, Mr. A of ABC, he wants to do IFC testing and wants to report on that, on IFC testing as per Companies Act. Do you think this particular standard will be applied in that scenario? Do you think this particular standard will be applicable in this scenario, in this type of audit?
No, sir. It's specifically the user entities works relating to the financial information. That related control only it's talk about. It's not this information.
Very good. Yes. See, now there could be multiple type of control test. There could be multiple type of description analysis. But when there is an assignment which talks about that, okay, the service organization wants to provide a kind of assurance to the user auditor, okay, for the controls at the services that are provided by service organization, then only this report will come into the picture. Type 1, type 2 report. It complements SA 402. Understand that it complements SA 402. So understand the scenario. Remember the scenario of SA 402? I'll go back to the notes that we discussed last time. Yeah. This was the scenario of SA 402. What was that? We had an ABC entity. We had an MKP and company CA firm who was a user auditor. User entity was ABC. Now there was World Payroll Services, which was service organization, and there was a XYZ and company CA firm. Okay, who were the service auditor. Now, in order, this particular report, type 1, type 2 report, will be used by ultimately by whom? By MKP and company, that is a user auditor. So this user auditor will be the ultimate, you can say, consumer or user of that particular report. This auditor will use the report. He is the ultimate person who will use the report. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Now, for that, this service auditor has to prepare the reports on the controls of the service organization, but that too relevant for that, relevant for user entity. So if you prepare a report on the controls which are not relevant for the user entity, you cannot say that it will covered by SA 3402. Because ultimately, if I'm preparing a type 1 report or type 2 report, it has to go to the user auditor. If it does not contain the controls which are relevant for the user entity, then what is the use of type 1, type 2 report? So in that particular scenario, type 1, type 2 report will not be relevant. As a result, this particular, okay, so this particular standard is only applicable when the service organization is responsible for, okay, on the suitability of design of control, but it does not deal in the scenario where assurance engagement is there with respect to report on the whether the controls at the service organizations are operated as described, like without any reference to the user entity, or to report only on controls at the service organization other than those related to the service that likely to be relevant to the user entity's internal control. Means I am not commenting on the controls which are relevant for the user entity. I am commenting on the controls which are not relevant for the user entity. Then why will you apply this standard? Are you getting the point? So these are the scenarios where this particular standard will not be applicable. Clear? Any doubt? Okay. If no doubts, let's proceed further. Now, we fairly understand, like based on that particular chapter number 2, I hope you guys have seen the lectures of chapter number 2. If not, let me provide you a summary again. So, when I talk about the term service organization, that will mean an entity that is providing service, that is providing service to the user entity. Now, who is the user entity in this particular scenario? APC. World Payroll Service is a service organization. They are providing the payroll function, outsourced payroll function services. So that is a service organization, okay, who are providing this services to the user entity. Service auditor is auditor of the service organization, and the user auditor is the auditor of user entity. This is how the entire picture is there, and we need to understand this entire picture in this way only. So I will be using these names to make you guys familiar. Whenever we will discuss a particular scenario, we will use these similar names so that you guys can understand what we are talking about. Okay. So when I talk about service organization, or when I say world payroll, okay, you may understand that it's a service organization, world payroll services. So you will get, okay, it's a service organization. When I talk about ABC Limited, user entity, you will understand now what is user entity. Okay. So what is service organization? We understood that. In summary, the service organization is nothing but your World Payroll Services Limited that we just now saw. Okay. Now, coming to the question that what is covered in the type 1 and type 2 report? See, the type 1 and type 2 report, we need to understand, because that is the subject matter over here that will be prepared. Earlier, in SA 402, we were talking about consuming the type 1, type 2 report. Now we will be talking about the preparation of the type 1 and type 2 report. So type 1 report, when I talk about type 1 report, it is a report as at a date, particularly on a particular date. Okay, when I talk about type 2 report, it's a throughout the period. It talks about a period. Okay. Now, again, when I talk about type 1 report is a description prepared by the management of the systems and controls, related controls, whichever are there, okay, which are designed and implemented as at a specified date. That's a type 1 that we discussed in our chapter number 2 also. And when I talk about design, I am talking about suitability of the design, reasonable assurance on suitability of the design. When I talk about objective, I talk about achievement of the control objectives. Okay. So whether the control objectives are being met or not, that is the type 1 report. When I talk about type 2 report, everything which is discussed in the type 1, that will be part of that. Plus you have, instead of specified period, okay, instead of specified date, you now have a specified period and effectiveness throughout the period. Okay, so in type 2 report, we will talk about, like, management talks about description of system and control, okay, related controls which are implemented as at a date also, but we more so talk about implemented specified period during that particular period and effectiveness of those controls throughout the period. Now, for the purpose of effectiveness, remember we discussed that we will test those controls. Then only you will be able to say that, okay, they are effective. So, in that particular scenario, what will be the objective of the auditor when it comes to the preparation and issuance of the type 1, type 2 report? Okay, so the objective of the auditor for SAE 3402 will be first to obtain reasonable assurance. Why reasonable assurance? Because this kind of report will be used for the purpose of audit, and if this report does not provide a reasonable assurance, how you can pass on that particular assurance? Like, if I'm not giving a reasonable assurance from this report, I will not get a reasonable assurance in audit also, because in audit at the end I have to issue a reasonable assurance. Yes or no? So to obtain reasonable assurance and to pass on that reasonable assurance in my report to the user auditor about what? Number one, service organizations' descriptions of its systems. They fairly present the system designed and implemented throughout the specified period. In case of type 2 report, but when there is a type 1 report, it will become specified date. The controls related to the controls objective stated in the service organization's description of its systems were suitably designed throughout the specified period. Now, if it is a type 1 report, it will become specified date. Or where included in the scope of engagement, the controls operated effectively. This is only there when there is a type 2 report. Okay, so this is applicable only in case of type 2 report. That is, the controls that we are talking about are operated effectively to provide reasonable assurance that the controls objectives stated in the service organization's description of the systems were achieved throughout the specified period. We don't have a date in this because this is not applicable in case of a type 1 report. Again, so the important points are: number one, description of the system. That is the first thing that we need to check, whether the description of the system of service organization fairly presents the systems which were designed and implemented on the ground. So whatever written on the paper is the thing which is implemented on the ground about the systems. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So that was the first thing. Second thing is that whether these particular systems that we are talking about, these systems were designed to achieve a particular control objectives. Okay. So there are control objectives, there are controls behind these systems. Now, whether the control which are designed for the control objectives as specified in this particular description of the system were designed throughout the specified period, or in case here it will be kind of specified date if it is a type 1 report. So controls related to the controls objective as stated in the description of the system were suitably designed throughout the specified period or specified date, as the case may be. Third, controls operated effectively, that the controls objectives, okay, were achieved throughout the specified period, not the date. Reason because there is no concept of the date, specified date in type 1 report. If operative effectiveness. A lot of students have this question, sir, why cannot we report on the effectiveness on a specified date? What is the problem in reporting the effectiveness, operating effectiveness of the control on a specified date? Can anyone tell me what is the problem? Why cannot I report on the operating effectiveness of the control as a specified date? Anyone? Yes, no, what it's like, what do you think? Can we do that? We cannot do that? What do you think? Why we cannot have that kind of report? Like, why we cannot have a report wherein we can say that the controls operated effectively on a specified date? Why cannot we have this kind of thing in the type 1 report? Why it is only reserved for the type 2 report? Anyone? No? Okay. So the answer to the question, this particular question, is that this cannot be done. Reason because if I say that this control operated effectively on a specified date, that does not give me any kind of assurance. I need operative effectiveness throughout a period. On a date, if that control operated effectively, it is not operations. See, the term operating effectively, when I talk about operating, it is operating for a period. If I say on a particular single day operating, it becomes designed. Okay. That means that if I say on a particular day this was operating effectively, that means it is designed effectively, it is designed appropriately to work on that particular day. That is all good as this part, which we are already covering. Okay. Suitably designed throughout the suitably designed as at a specified date. It was designed appropriately on that particular date, because operating on one single day is equivalent to design only. Operating can only come into the picture when you have a period. You cannot say that operating on one day and rest other days I don't know. That is no assurance at all. Okay, that's why we don't have a condition, or we don't have a report says that operating effectively as at a date. It doesn't give any assurance per se. Clear? Okay. So these are the objectives of the auditor, to obtain reasonable assurance about these things and to report on the matters in the above. I will only be able to pass on the reasonable assurance when I get the reasonable assurance. And this report is drafted to provide a reasonable assurance. Reason because the user auditor will use this as an evidence for the purpose of audit. And at the end, he also has to obtain the reasonable assurance. Any doubt till now? Okay. So now let's talk about again type 1, type 2 report. It's given in your study material. Very good. If you see what we discussed is description. Okay. Here also description. Description of the system. Again, in type 1 report, we discussed about controls and the controls objective, whether they are suitably designed as at a specified date. Okay. And description fairly presents the systems, organization system designed and implemented at a specified date. But when you come to a type 2 report, this date becomes a specified period. So again, point number B, throughout the specified period. Rest everything is same. Instead of date, it will become specified period. And the third point is the controls stated in the service organization description operated effectively throughout the period. Okay, so that is the type 2 report. This is an additional point that we were talking about. To type 2 report. Okay. Mark it very important because this table is very good and very important for your understanding of the type 1 and type 2 report. Even you can go back when you are referring to SA 402, at that point in time also you can refer this table and it can help you. So you can provide a reference to SA 402. Okay. Now once we are done, once we understand this, the question comes is that how to determine whether we need to issue type 1 report or type 2 report. See, now you have to think from the service auditor's point of view. You are done with the user auditor. You are no longer doing the audit of the entity which was there, which was ABC. Sorry, ABC entity. ABC Limited. So you are no longer doing the audit of ABC Limited. You are no longer the MKP and company, but now you are the XYZ and company CA firm. So you need to think from the service auditor's point of view, which report you will issue. Tell me which report you will issue. Anyone? Okay, Neha, very good. Which report you will issue. Now you are the service auditor. How will you determine which report to be issued? Anyone? Okay. The answer to this question is pretty much simple. This is the engagement. You have to agree with the management what engagement it is. Simple. Whatever you you agree with the management, that will be the purpose of the engagement, whether to issue a type 1 report or type 2 report. Obviously. So once you management will reach out to you, okay, we need type 1 report or type 2 report, you will discuss with them, okay, what is the purpose of this report, whether you will be giving user auditor, whether it will be relevant for the user auditor, and then accordingly you will proceed with that kind of report. Simple, based on the discussion with the management. Nothing complex in that. But before accepting this engagement, what you will look into? What are the points that you will look for before accepting an engagement to issue type 1 or type 2 report? Anyone? What are the things that you will look into before you proceed for accepting a type 1, type 2 report engagement?
Agreeing the terms of the engagement
Yes.
and compliance with the ethical requirements.
Okay. Yes, very good. Anything else you guys think that would be relevant that we should look into before accepting the engagement for type 1, type 2 report? Okay. So, as you correctly say, yes, ethical requirements, perfectly fine. We will look into the ethical requirements. Okay, compliance with the ethical requirements, including the independence. Okay, because here we are going to issue a reasonable assurance. So, independence is required. Second, here you need to understand who is the management, who is the those charged with governance, to whom you will communicate with respect to the, for the purpose of this engagement. So you need to inquire that, okay, who is the management, who is the those charged with governance with whom I can communicate. Third, before accepting, before accepting, first of all, understand whether you as a service auditor have the capability, competency, and the resource to perform this engagement. Whether do you have the competency, capability to perform such engagement? Number two, you need to understand what is the criteria applied by the service organization. Remember, this is very important term. Criteria applied by the service organization to prepare the description of its system, and will be like, based on this, like whether this description, then we will provide the reasonable assurance on that. So the question comes is that how will you determine that whether the criteria is appropriate? See, one such condition is we need to understand whether the criteria applied by the service organization to prepare the description is suitable. So suitability of the criteria is something we need to understand. But how we will understand that? Anyone? Okay, tell me, what is the criteria? Can anyone give me an example?
First, we need to understand the agreement of the service organization between the user entity.
We
need to understand the responsibilities of the management.
Okay. Okay, what is the criteria basically? What is the criteria? When I talk about we need to check for the criteria, what is criteria? Okay, so when we discussed about the type 1, type 2 report, okay, I'll go back to the type 1, type 2 report, because it's each and every word is very important to understand. Otherwise, we will not get the understanding of the entire essay. Rest of the things are fine. Once you understand what we are discussing, how to do audit, I'm pretty much sure you guys are, pretty much equipped with how to do audit. TOD, TOC, all these things you already know. But the question comes is, what is the criteria? And what, when I talk about a service organization description of its systems, what is that? Can anyone tell me, what do you, like, is this?
Yes, sir. They need to provide the what type of service the service organization provide to the user entity, the procedure, how what are the information technologies, and what are the SOP is used, how many personal is used, transaction, how it's recorded and processed, how it is output is provided to the user entity. All these things we are to be assessed in the criteria cases.
Okay. So I'll show you an illustrative example of a particular document, which is, you can say, it's a description of its systems of the service organization. This is what is prepared. Again, this is an example illustrative one, which you are seeing on your screen. Now, what it contains, basically these kind of documents, what it contains. So these documents provide, okay, what are the services provided to the user entity? Let's say this is only for the payroll processing system. So employee data management service, payroll calculation service, payroll processing and disbursement, statutory compliance and reporting or reporting. So all these kind of services are provided. Okay, these kind of services are being provided to the user entity. Now, if you remember, the first thing was like when we were talking about service organizations description of these systems. Okay, so we are talking about not only the service provided, but many more things. For example, system components, like who are the people involved, the softwares which are being used, infrastructure, okay, data, procedures, all things. Now, control objectives. Remember, we were talking about there are control objectives. And for that control objectives, there are controls. Now, what is the objective? Basically means, like to ensure something does not go wrong, to mitigate a risk. So control objective can be a scenario where you are mitigating a risk. So controls to provide reasonable assurance that the logical access to the pay core application and the client data is restricted to authorized individuals. Now, to achieve this objective, you have these controls. To achieve these objectives, you have these controls. Similarly, to achieve this objective, you have these controls. The controls and its control objectives. Now, when I talk about type 1 report, I talk about whether they are designed as at a date. But if I talk about type 2 report, it becomes throughout a period. So first is the description. So whether this description meets the actual on-ground situation of the company. Number 2, whether the control and their control objectives are designed as at a specified date appropriately. Again, third, control objectives and the key controls for that. Then service organization, if there is any sub-service organization. Okay. Then complementary user entity control. Can anyone tell me what is complementary user entity control?
So complementary user. Yeah. Yes, please proceed, sir. I will answer.
No. So the question is, what is that?
Sir, complementary control is that when the user entity providing the service, the list of service to be done by that service entity, service organization, before that itself, some of the control will be implemented by that user entity. Say example, before providing the payroll data to the service organization, they themselves will verify, check whether all the employees are included, all the leaves taken and number of working days included, what is the pay, basic pay and the other thing, everything, whether any person is retired employee is there, anything, any person is loss of pay is there, everything they will prepare on their own, and they will verify and they will approve before delivering the information, before processing by the service organization. That is called complementary user entity control.
Yes, absolutely correct. Very good. So that means that the responsibility that I'm assuming that the user entity will follow. For example, in our case, user entity was ABC Limited. So before giving data to me or before they rely on my thing, whatever things they are doing, ABC Limited is doing, it's a user entity control, complement. That means their responsibility, not my responsibility. So user entity, for example, is responsible for ensuring the accuracy, completeness, timeliness of all employee master data, variable pay, payroll outputs, and submitted to PayPro. So whatever data is being submitted, it is a responsibility of the user entity. Means the data that I will receive now, I will assume that is complete and accurate data. I will not go on the inaccuracy of the data. And on the basis of that, I will then prepare the payroll. For example, whether the client payroll input data is complete and accurate or not. So basically, once the creation data will be provided by them, that has to be accurate, and then I will do my control objectives as well. I will have my own controls for the month-on-month payroll. That is separate thing. But for that, these are the controls that should work appropriately. Okay. So that is the user entity complementary user entity control. Now this document, this particular document that I'm talking about is nothing but the description of the service organization of its systems. Description of service organization and its system. Okay. Now, when I talk about description of service organization, okay, service organization system, basically what was the objective was whether the description presents fairly the service organization systems that are designed and implemented at a specified date or a period in case of type 1 or type 2 report. So whatever is written in this is actually there on the ground. That's the one thing. Now, is it a date or a period? That will depend upon the type 1 or type 2. The controls related to the control objectives stated in the service organization's description. These are the control and their control objectives, which are stated in the description, this part basically. Basically, this part I'm talking about. Whether this particular part, okay, is designed and implemented throughout the particular period or a date. So these controls are designed throughout the period or a particular date, and whether they were operating effectively for a period, that is the type 1 and type 2 report. And when I talk about the criteria, okay, so what was the role of the criteria? If we go back and understand from the study material, so we need to ensure that the criteria to be applied by the service organization to prepare the description. Now tell me, what do you understand by criteria? To prepare the description. Anyone? Now you tell me, what do you mean by criteria over here? You saw the description, detailed description we discussed. But now tell me, what do you mean by the criteria to prepare this description? This means simply, criteria means kind of a requirement basically you can say requirement, or what to include or not include in the preparation of the description. That means what should I write, what should I not write, what should be the format, okay, how it should be structured, what it should be, what controls should I place for this particular service for this user entity. So the requirement, what to include, what not to include, is the criteria. So I need to make sure that the criteria is suitable. Why? Because at the end, I am issuing an opinion on this document. If this document is designed appropriately, fine. If this document is not designed appropriately, then it's a problem for me. That's why I need to understand the criteria to be applied for the preparation of the description. So that the information that is to be provided to the user entity should not be limited, that they are unlikely to be useful for the user entity or their auditors. If I remove key components, key controls, and if I just provide, brief some 2-3 paragraphs, do you think it will be relevant for them? No. So I need to assess the suitability of the criteria which I used in preparing the description of the systems. In case of a type 2 report, evaluating whether the controls are operating effectively or not, the criteria to evaluate. Clear? Any doubt? Then over there, I will ask management to assume their responsibility. Okay, management, accept what is your responsibility. Your responsibility is preparation of the description. Okay, your responsibility is to have a reasonable basis of, that the service organization will have the controls. It's your responsibility that service organizations controls are appropriate, that they meet the control objectives, okay, that you comply with the law or regulation. So all these things, okay, I will say that it's a responsibility of the management. Along with that, I will ask management to assume their responsibility to provide all the information, whatever I ask as a service auditor, to provide me unrestricted access, to provide me additional information as required for the purpose of this engagement. All these things I will ask management to accept before we proceed for the engagement. Clear? Any doubt? Okay. So in assessing the suitability of the criteria to evaluate the design of the controls, now description is done. Now the design of the controls. I need to assess the suitability of the design of the controls now. How do you assess the suitability of the design of the control? Anyone? How do you check the suitability of the design of the control? Because one of my requirement now is that whether the controls related to the controls objectives as stated in the service organization description were suitably designed as its specified date or the period as may be the case. But how will you say this? How will you identify this? Anyone?
Sir, if the service organization identify the risk that threaten the achievement of the control objective, That has to be looked into it, sir. And also the control effectiveness also we have to see.
But when I say, how will you check the suitability of the design? How will you check the suitability of the design? Let's go back to the chapter number 2. Over there, when I discussed about the suitability of the design, we discussed that in order to understand the suitability of the design, what I need to do is I need to check whether the control is designed effectively. Remember design effectiveness, operating effectiveness testing that we have discussed already? Yes or no? So the design effectiveness and the operating effectiveness we have discussed. Anyone? What is design effectiveness? What was design effectiveness?
Whether they included all the process in it.
No. So when we discussed about the design and operating effectiveness of the controls, we discussed like, okay, why do we have a control in an organization? Why do we need the control? Anyone?
To identify the error or fraud.
Absolutely correct. Yes. To mitigate a risk, to address a risk. Now, the risk can be of material misstatement, the risk can be of fraud. Okay. But to mitigate or to address a risk, we have the controls. Now, when I talk about suitability of the design, that means whether the control is designed in a way that it mitigates or addresses the fraud or risk. For example, I designed a control that the payment should not be processed without any approval. The control was that at least two different persons should be involved for the payment processing, and one person should not be involved, only one person, to avoid the fraud. That's why I have the control to avoid the fraud in payment processing. That's And if the control is designed in a way that there are two specific people who approves the payment before it gets processed, yes, it is designed suitably to meet the objective. Yes or no?
Maker checker.
Yes, make a checker. Are you understanding? The requirement here is that I am just making sure whether the controls are designed effectively or not. That's what we are discussing over here. That's the suitably designed, design effectiveness, nothing else that we have understood in the control testing. So when I say suitably designed is the same thing as a design effectiveness. Of controls. A classic example to make you more understand on this particular scenario that we discussed in chapter number 3. Just let me bring the notes of chapter number 3 for you guys. No, wait. Okay. Yes. Sorry, it was in chapter number 4. The classic example was this particular image. We discussed the umbrella is the control. The purpose of and the objective of the control is to prevent the water from falling on this particular person. Now, if the size of umbrella is very small, if the size of umbrella is very small, I would say it is not mitigating basically what the particular objective over here. The control objective is not being the control is not designed appropriately. So if I say umbrella is very small, not designed appropriately, it will never stop the rain. Holes is the second thing. Like, an umbrella, if I have these particular holes from the water is dripping, it's a secondary thing. But at the first instance, if the size of the umbrella is not small, it's not big enough, it is not designed appropriately. Or if the umbrella is upwards, curved instead of downward curve, the curve is upwards. There's an issue in the design.
Yes, sir.
So,
Where airflow is heavy, then it will go upside.
yes. So in all those scenarios, that's the purpose, like understanding whether the design is suitable or not for the objective. Objective is to prevent water from falling on this particular person. So, yeah. So that is the suitability of the design. And third is the operating effectiveness. That is operating effectiveness. Now, if you understand these things, rest of the standard is pretty much easy. Trust me, rest of the standard is pretty much straightforward and easy. Nothing complex is there. Why? Now you know what to do. You know how to do. Just we need to see, we need to obtain the evidence and perform the procedures. That's it. So to obtain the evidence and perform the procedures, first you will determine the materiality. Now, here in the case of this particular type 1, type 2 report, materiality will be slightly different. Okay. So, like my materiality will be based on, the suitability of the design of the control and effective operatingness. So I need to accordingly see the materiality, what is relevant for the decision making of the user. Okay, so whosoever user is this particular, of this particular report, for him, what is the suitability of the design? Like, oh, sorry, what is the, relevant for him? That will become part of my materiality. Okay. Then once I decide the materiality, once I understand the materiality, I go and I obtain the understanding of the service organization system. Is nothing but similar to essay. Which essay? Obtaining the understanding.
315.
Yes, very good. 315. Then once I have the understanding, I will obtain the evidence regarding the description. Simple. I will check whether the control on the ground is same as the description which is being given to me. Then I will obtain the evidence regarding the design of the controls. By understanding, this can be done by inquiry, inspection, observation, inquiry, inspection, observation, re-performance, or recalculation, whatever it may be applicable. Similarly, design of the controls. Generally, design is tested through process walkthroughs. Do you know what is process walkthrough? Anyone? What is process walkthrough?
Sir, process walkthrough is the process when the person in the while doing the process, he will explain how the process will be done. The other side, the person, those who is not involved in that particular process, he will understand and observe whether that process is where the process is correctly recorded, where the non-value added, all these things he will identify and he will record and report accordingly. The process walkthrough is independent review of the other person.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of, you can say inspection also, a type of an inspection or observation basically. So it's an observation. The other person performs the particular process and you observe how he performs the process. That's a process walkthrough. You understand design by that. Then you obtain the operating effectiveness of the controls. This is nothing but your TOC, test of controls. Okay. Over there, you may understand the internal audit function. What was the standard for that? Similar to
360, 365. No.
Nope. Internal audit.
610.
Very good. Using the work of internal auditors. Okay. So SA 610. You may ask for written representations. Okay. Whatever written representations that we usually ask with respect to the design and everything. So all those things are there. Subsequent events. Again, similar to
560.
yes, very good. SA 560. Okay. That's it. Oh, till here, you are done with pretty much of your, engagement on the type 1, type 2 report. Now, the only part remaining is your reporting. You obtain the evidence, you do the sampling, you understand the nature and cause of the deviations. So when I talk about TOC, TOC is sampling, you determine what to be tested, how much to be tested, what is the population, what is the, appropriate sample size, what are the deviations, whether deviation is there, anomaly is there, whether it is a significant deficiency, material weakness, all those things. So whatever we are discussing, when I say TOC, all those concepts will be applicable. When I say use of work of internal audit function, similarly, when I talk about 610, so you will determine whether to use the work of internal auditor. Can we rely upon the work that is performed by them? Can we use the internal audit function to get the direct assistance? All those things. Subsequent event, I'm talking about subsequent event which is there. Clear? Now comes the last part of SA 3402. That's the reporting. Very important. Now, when I issue a report, we already know what we need to write. We already now know what is required to be written in that report. If it is a type 1 report, then what is required to be written? If it is a type 2 report, then what is required to be written? So we will now just see that particular wordings. So first you start with the title, you start with then addressee, then you identify the service organization description of its systems. Okay, for the type 1 or type 2 report, or the service organization's assertions, which or the things which are required to be included in the type 2 report. Then those parts which are not covered by your opinion of the description of the system. So if there is any part which is not covered by your opinion, you need to specify that. If your description refers to the need of complementary user entity control, okay, in that case, you will have a statement that service auditor has not evaluated the suitability, design, operating effectiveness of the complementary user entity control, because it's not at our place, it's the place of user entity. It is not my role, not of the role of the service auditor. So that's why I have not evaluated the design and the operating effectiveness of the complementary user entity controls. Okay, and it is their responsibility. Second, if there is a sub-service organization involved, what is a sub-service organization? That is the, where you are doing a subcontracting of the work that you have received or the processes. So you are doing, again, further, you are transferring the work to someone else. So you are the service organization. Now you are also passing on the work to someone else. So sub-service organization. If there is a work performed by the sub-service organization, then the nature of activities performed by them, okay, and the description of their system. Then you identification of a criteria that you, as I said, the criteria we were discussing. You identify the criteria. Okay, then a statement if it is a type 2 report. Okay, only in case of type 2 report. What? That the description of the test of controls are intended only for user entities and their auditors who have sufficient understanding to consider it. It is not for other people. Simple. That's why I said at the start also, this standard is only applicable when we are preparing. The service auditor is preparing report for the user auditor. User auditor is the ultimate person who will consume this report. So we have to write this statement. So tomorrow, if anyone reads this particular report, if you are not the user auditor, this is not for you. Then a statement with respect to that service organization is responsible for preparing the description, providing the service, stating the control objectives, designing and implementing the control. Similar to management responsibility. Okay. Then a statement that of the service auditor's responsibility, that our responsibility to express an opinion on the service organization's description, on the design of the controls, okay, related to the control objectives stated in the description, and in case of type 2 report, on the operating effectiveness of those controls. Then a statement that this particular engagement is performed as per SA 3402. Okay, now then you need to specify a summary of the service auditor procedures to obtain reasonable assurance. Remember, when we discussed SA 402, at that point in time, I'll go back to that. We discussed that the type 1 and the type 2 report, to specify effectiveness throughout the period, we need to provide the details of the test of control and their results. So we specifically discussed that the type 2 report also contains this thing, details of the test of controls and the results, on the basis of which we are saying this is effective throughout the period. So basis of these results, we say whether the control are operating throughout the period or not. On the basis of that, then we comment on the effectiveness. Yes or no? Can you recall on that? So now, based on that, when we are issuing the type 2 report, we have to provide a summary of the service auditor's procedures to obtain reasonable assurance. Okay, that basically, like, this evidence is sufficient and appropriate for the basis of service opinion and type 1, type 2 report, all those things. Then you need to provide a statement on the limitations of controls. Then you need to issue an opinion. In case of type 2 report, the 3 things. In case of type 1 report, the 2 things. At specified date, this is period, and this is period. Then the date of the service auditor's assurance report, the signature, the place, like signature, and then you have, like if it's a charter accountant, like in our case it will be, then you have a membership number, FRN, UDIN, all these things. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt? No? Okay. Now, one more thing is here we discussed about a summary of the procedures. Here we are only providing summary. But we need to give a detailed description of the test and the results, not the summary. As a result, after the opinion, we provide a kind of annexure. You can say this can be an annexure to the report, to the opinion, wherein you provide the this particular kind of thing as an attachment, that okay, what were the procedures that were performed, test of controls that were performed, and results of those tests. A kind of attachment or annexure to the opinion in the case of type 2 report only. Type 2 report only. There is no requirement for the type 1 report. And then if you identify anything which says that which creates a modified opinion related requirement, like if there is an control failure, material weakness, significant deficiency, so in that case you can issue a modified opinion. If you are not able to obtain the sufficient and appropriate evidence, if you think the design is not appropriate, if they were not operating effectively, if the description is not appropriate, you can issue a modified opinion. Perfectly fine. And the wordings of the modified opinion will be accordingly. Clear? Then you have the documentation. That's it. Straightforward. So the main and important part was to understand the opinion in this particular scenario. What we are doing, what we are issuing, okay, in type 1 and type 2 report. If you understand that, rest of the things, whatever you have understood in the audit, that the same concept is applied in this scenario. Any doubt? Any doubt? Yes, no? Okay. If no doubts, then before proceeding to the next particular standard that I want to cover for today, which is basically your SAE 3402. This is the assurance engagement to report on compilation of pro forma financial information included in the prospectus. Compilation of a pro forma financial information. Now, we will understand what is pro forma financial information, what is compilation, what is the assurance engagement on that, and how it is performed. Okay. But before we deep dive into this particular standard, let's take a quick 10-minute break. After the break, we'll gather back and we'll start the discussion on SAE 3402. Okay, let's take a quick 10-minute break. Thank you. Am I audible? आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है अशोक जी. Just let me check. Hello. Okay, ठीक है. Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's continue the session. So we will now discuss on the SAE 3420. That is the assurance engagement to report on the compilation of a pro forma financial information in a prospectus. Now, my question to you all is, what is the pro forma financial information? What is this pro forma financial information? Anyone? What do you understand by this pro forma financial information? Quickly, guys.
Is it the abridged financial information for the prospectus?
Okay.
Kind of abridged information.
Kind
Summary.
of abridged. Okay, yes. Anyone else? You have something further to add? What do you mean by pro forma financial information? Or have you guys seen before a pro forma financial information? Anyone? What is this pro forma financial information? Okay, let's understand with an example. Then we will be, like able to understand in a much more better way. This is the prospectus. Okay, we have already discussed this prospectus before also. This is the prospectus. Okay, now when I talk about pro forma financial information, okay, what it says that, like if you go and see the definition even for the pro forma financial information, it is the financial information shown together with the adjustment to illustrate the impact of an event or transaction on unadjusted financial information, as if the event occurred or had occurred on the or the transaction has undertaken at the earlier date. For example, I'll give you one example. Let's say there was an ABC Limited. It has a financials FY for 31st 3/25, or let's say not 23, let's make 24. Now on, let's say 30th 6/24, there was an acquisition of subsidiary. Now they are going for IPO, let's say on 31st 12/2024. Now they will prepare the financials on 31st 12/2024. But somewhere down the line, there is a requirement for the SEBI to prepare the adjusted financial statements. Okay. On 31/3/2024 to demonstrate the impact of the event as if it has occurred before on the date of financial statement. What if the acquisition was not happened on 36/24, but it happened on the 31/3/24? What and how the financial statement would have looked like? So that thing is given in your pro forma financial information. Now, for that, let's go to the pro forma part over here and understand that. $269. Okay. So when we see over financial statements over here, for the purpose of prospectus, we see they are the restated. Okay, these are the restated financial statements. Okay, why restated? Because they might have applied some adjustment with respect to the transactions which have taken after the date of financial statement, but to show the impact of that particular transaction as if they occurred before that particular, or on that statement date of financial statement. So what if the acquisition happened on 31/3/2024? Okay. So these kind of financial statements are prepared for the purpose of prospectus, and auditors then issue opinion on these kind of financials. Okay, as per the requirement of the SEBI ICDR and all these stuff. Okay, so now what happens is when this kind of adjustments are done, this kind of financial statements are prepared. These are known as the pro forma financial statements. Now, for this pro forma financial statement, if you perform any engagement, this engagement is covered by SAE 3420. This engagement is covered by SAE 3420. Okay. Now, what we are required to do in SAE 3420, we are required to understand and to verify whether the pro forma financial information which are prepared as per the criteria, and then the adjustments which are there have been applied appropriately or not. So the purpose of pro forma financial information is to illustrate the impact of a significant event or transaction on unadjusted financial information, as if that event occurred on the date of financial statement or that financial information. Okay, here auditor is required to provide a reasonable assurance on the compilation of a pro forma financial information. So the objective is first to provide the reasonable assurance, and for that we will obtain reasonable assurance about the pro forma financial information. That is nothing but your financial information plus, or you can say pro forma financial information. I'll give you a formula, explain through way of a formula. Pro forma financial information, that is a PFI. Okay. So pro forma financial information, or you can say PFFI or PFI, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Both are same. Okay. But pro forma financial information is nothing but unadjusted financial information plus the appropriate adjustments which are done to get the pro forma financial information plus the adjustments. Now these adjustments are kind of to illustrate the impact. So when I talk about these adjustments, this is to illustrate the impact of event or transaction as if it happened on the date of unadjusted financial information. Okay. So that is a PFFI or PFI, whatever you want to call. And the objective of the auditor here is, with respect to the pro forma financial information, is first to provide a reasonable assurance with respect to the pro forma financial information that in all material respect it has been prepared as per the applicable criteria. Are you understanding? Any doubt till now? Any doubt? So there are some provisions in SEBI ICDS, okay, issue of capital and ICDR, issue of capital and disclosure requirement. In that, basically, there are provisions with respect to if there is a change in with respect to holding or more than 20%, a lot of things are there. In that case, the impact of that particular change is required to be disclosed. So basically, if you talk about that particular ICDR regulations, cover this particular requirement with respect to the voluntary disclosures and the mandatory disclosures on the pro forma financial information. So it has some criteria. Somewhere it is 20%, somewhere it is more, and there are multiple criteria in ICDR with respect to that. So accordingly, if entity is preparing that particular pro forma financial information, then auditor has to issue an opinion, and accordingly this particular standard will come into the place. So there are multiple requirements with respect to the pro forma financial information, when it is required to be presented, when it is required to be given. Okay. Now, with respect to this, we understand what is pro forma financial information. Now we need to understand what is criteria. So what do you mean by criteria over here? Can anyone tell me what is criteria?
Sir, criteria here means the responsible party. Responsible party means the reporting entity is named as a responsible party. When they are compiling the pro forma financial information, I think till now there is no standard setting organization till now is available. Is there any law which is providing the guidance? According to that, they will prepare. Otherwise, as per the responsible party, he will design and develop that criteria, how to prepare, how to compile that pro forma financial information. Accordingly, it will be prepared.
Yeah. So very good. So criteria is how to prepare that particular financial information. What is required to be included as an adjustment? What is not required to be included as an adjustment? Number two, how the adjustment is required to be adjusted. For example, when I say that the purpose of adjustment is to illustrate the impact, but how? What number should be considered? Whether before tax, after tax, a lot of things are there in that adjustment part. But what is the requirement is the criteria. How to demonstrate that impact, how to illustrate that impact, and at the end, how to present the pro forma financial information is the criteria. Okay. As of now, if I talk about prospectus, SEBI ICDR regulations are there, which basically define the criteria how this particular information is required to be presented. And again, there are requirements now. There was also amendment with respect to ICDR regulations, which allow users to voluntarily disclose pro forma financial information, unlike earlier. Okay. So basically, that is the one thing which is, is a criteria which can be applicable in this particular scenario. Now, compilation of a pro forma financial information. How to compile that? Because the engagement over here is compilation of a pro forma financial information that is included in the prospectus. We need to understand how that compilation happens. Okay. So when we talk about the compilation of the pro forma financial information, basically, first of all, we need to identify the unadjusted financial information. When I say identify means, we need to identify the source of the unadjusted financial information, from where it is coming. What is the source basically? Okay. So for example, it may be financial statement pertaining to FY 24-25, FY 23-24. What is the source of that unadjusted financial information? Is it coming from audited FS or unaudited FS? So what is the source of that unadjusted financial information which is required to be used in the pro forma financial information? Second, making the adjustments. Now here, adjustments are made based on the events which are significant or which are kind of material or required to be made as per the criteria. Okay. So then these adjustments basically define what and how the pro forma unadjusted financial information will be changed. Okay. Then at the end, we present and disclose that pro forma financial information based on the criteria, like what disclosures are required to be given, what schedules are required to be prepared, notes to accounts. Okay, all these things, how much detail it should be, how much concise it should be, how much precise, how much aggregation, disaggregation is required to be done of this pro forma financial information. So these are the things which are involved into the compilation step. The question comes is, who does the compilation? Can anyone tell me who does the compilation in this scenario?
Comparison will be done by the management.
Yes, absolutely correct. So practitioner has no responsibility to do the compilation. So practitioner has no responsibility to compile the pro forma financial information for the entity. No, that is not the role of practitioner. The role of practitioner is to obtain reasonable assurance that the pro forma financial information, which is already compiled, okay, is compiled in all material respect by the responsible party, that is the management. So already compiled by the responsible party, that is the management, on the basis of applicable criteria. It can be ICDR or whatever applicable criteria it may be. So that's the role of practitioner, not to compile the financial information. Clear? Any doubt? Okay. Before I accept this particular engagement, what I will do? What are the things that I will check? Quickly. Before I accept this engagement, what are the steps that I will check?
Sir, as usual, that firm will determine, the practitioner will determine the capabilities, competence, and to perform that engagement, whether they have the sufficient resources to do that. And they will obtain the understanding of the knowledge about the engagement, and in how the financial information is prepared by them, and what criteria they use to prepare it, whether it is as per that SEBI, ICDR, or any other regulatory framework. What are the criteria on which the responsible party prepared the report?
Yes, very good. Very good. See, there are multiple things which are required to be considered before we accept this engagement. For example, first we need to determine whether we have the capability and competency to perform this engagement. As a practitioner, do I have the resources to perform this engagement? Do I have the time to perform this engagement? Let's say you are sitting on the 30th September due date, and on the last day, they come to you and say that, okay, no, we need report on the compilation of compiled pro forma financial information by tomorrow morning. Competency, capability, resources, all these things, do you have that to perform? Okay. Second, we need to understand that what knowledge we have about the financial information, about the entity, or about the pro forma financial information. For what purpose it will be used, and whether it will be misleading. If we issue a report, whether it will be a misleading, whether the criteria that is applied on the pro forma financial information for the preparation is misleading. Then what are the wordings of the opinion as per the law? Because these kind of assignments are taken as requirement as per the law. As I said, ICDR. So what will be the wordings of opinion? Fourth, like the source of unadjusted financial information. Now, when I talk about source of unadjusted financial information, what if that particular audit report, let's say, for example, my source of unadjusted financial information was of FY 23-24. but the auditor at that point in time issued adverse opinion. How will you deal with that? So I have the unadjusted financial information, but on that adverse opinion was issued. Can you consider that? Or not the adverse opinion, qualified opinion, or not the qualified opinion, but that report contained emphasis of matter paragraph, other matter paragraph, or going concern related uncertainty. How will you deal with that before taking the unadjusted financial information? If it is unaudited, then how will you deal with the unaudited, unadjusted financial information? Then comes the adjustment. What are the adjustments? Whether they are significant or whether they are such adjustments where basically they are trying to be, where, like management is trying to mislead with an adjustment. So whether the adjustments are disclosed adequately, whether their impact is passed on adequately, all these things you are required to consider before you accept the engagement. Then absolutely management's responsibility, that they are responsible for disclosing, they are responsible for preparation and presentation, they are responsible for complying with the regulations with respect to the pro forma financial information. They are required to provide all access to the practitioner. All these things we will ask management to confirm as their responsibility. Then only we will proceed with the engagement. Okay. So these are some basic things that we do for the engagement acceptance. As we discussed, capability, competency, preliminary knowledge, misleading the purpose, or the purpose of preparing the pro forma financial information, then wordings of the opinion that we discussed, unadjusted financial information, which can be audited, reviewed, contains emphasis of matter paragraph, modified opinion, adverse audit opinion, something like that. Okay, then never being audited. Okay, then the transactions include acquisition or how their impact is shown, accounting and financial reporting practices. Then you obtain agreement with respect to the access all information, adequately disclosing the applicable criteria, compiling the pro forma, providing the practitioner all information, additional information, or access to the people. Basic things to ask management, accept these things, then only we will proceed. Otherwise, we will not. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt till now? Okay. The second part then comes is the planning of the engagement. Okay, planning and performing the engagement. See, in this kind of particular engagement, planning and performing is basically depends upon the adjustments which are required to be made. Once you understand what adjustments are required to be made, from where you have the unadjusted financial information, based on that your planning and performing will depend upon. So over here you understand how compilation is done, what is the materiality, what is the adjustment. Okay, so like what is the applicable criteria, what is the materiality, how compilation is done, how pro forma financial information has been compiled, evidence about the extraction of the unadjusted financial information. For example, you will compare with the audit report. If there is no audit or review, then what is the source from where it has been extracted? How can you rely upon that? It's source appropriate. Then you determine whether the unadjusted financial information has been appropriately extracted or not. Then you take the adjustments and you audit the adjustments. when I talk about auditing the adjustments, you check whether they illustrate the impact of a significant event, as if the event had occurred or transaction has been taken at the earlier date. Okay. Now, for this adjustment, okay, obviously you will also apply applicable financial reporting framework. Okay. Now, here you will check whether they have been applied consistently. So the adjustments that are necessary for the pro forma financial information to be complied on a basis consistent with the applicable financial reporting framework. That means, let's say my policy for the revenue or my policy for the investment, let's say investment, my policy for the investment is something like I disclose the investment at the fair value or whatever option I have under the Ind AS. Am I making the adjustment for the investment in the subsidiary, taking that same financial reporting framework on a consistent basis, or I'm doing something else? Okay, whether I'm applying the accounting policies consistently or I'm doing something else. So that is something you need to understand with respect to the adjustments that are included in the pro forma financial information. Okay, then I need to at the end evaluate whether the overall presentation of the pro forma financial information is misleading, whether the overall presentation and structure of the pro forma financial information is appropriate, and I can distinguish it from the historical or other financial information, because in the prospectus you have the other financial information also. So in that case, it becomes important to understand whether this particular pro forma financial information is disclosed separately, labeled clearly, distinguished clearly. Okay. Second, whether it is misleading, whether it contains appropriate explanatory notes, whether the information that is required to be provided to the users is conveyed appropriately, whether all the adjustment, now with respect to the adjustments, one thing is the accuracy, that whether they are adjusted appropriately or not. Second is completeness of the adjustment, that all the adjustments are made to the pro forma financial information. And then I will check with the other information for the material inconsistency. Other information included in the prospectus. This is similar to which standard? Which essay? Similar to which essay? Come on, guys, quickly. Similar to which essay? Anyone? No? Okay. So basically, when I talk about over here, the essay that we talk about is essay 720, auditor's responsibility with respect to other information. Yes or no? Over there, we understood that, okay, we need to compare with the other information for the material inconsistency. Similarly, over here, I need to obtain written representations wherever required as per the requirement, and then I need to issue the opinion. Before I proceed to the opinion, any doubt about the compilation or engagement on the compilation of pro forma financial information? Any doubt? Yes, no? Okay. If no doubts, let's now proceed to the part of the opinion. How to draft the opinion, because that is the main important part that we need to understand. Okay. So again, you can issue modified, unmodified opinion. Perfectly fine. That is the option available to us. It's not like that we cannot issue unmodified or modified opinion. Yes, we can issue modified opinion. Okay. But let's say, for example, if the modification is of such nature that it is kind of adverse, or you are not able to get appropriate appropriate evidence, appropriate and sufficient evidence, you may consider to seek withdraw from the engagement. Okay. So either you can modify, but if not possible, like if the modification is of such a nature that still you may think it may be misleading, okay, then in that case you may seek to withdraw from the engagement also, or you may seek to have a legal advice. Okay. Now, where the law or regulation particularly, okay, which basically not is kind of a scenario where it does not allow you to contain a modified opinion with regard to the pro forma financial information on the basis of the criteria or whatever it is. Okay. Then in that case, like the law does not allow you to issue a modified opinion. So in that case, do not issue any opinion. Rather seek, okay, I'm not able to make any opinion, I'm not able to issue any opinion, I may withdraw from the engagement. But if it allows you to issue a modified opinion, okay, if it allows you to modify your opinion and modify your wordings, it allows you to, okay, change the wordings of your opinion and you can modify the opinion. Over there, you can issue a modified opinion also. Clear? Any doubt with this? Any doubt? Okay. So if not possible, then try to withdraw. If possible, then try to modify. Okay. That is the main. Now, talking about the other paragraph, do you think we can include emphasis of matter paragraph in our opinion? Is it permissible, or do you think it is appropriate to include emphasis of matter paragraph in the opinion over here?
Yes, sir, we can include it.
Yes, absolutely. So similarly, the way we have in the audit report, we can have the emphasis of matter paragraph where you consider necessary to draw the user attention, okay, to the matter presented or disclosed in the pro forma financial information. You can go for the emphasis of matter paragraph. Not an issue. Okay. Similar to which essay?
706.
Very good. Okay. Now we will see the basically structure of the report in this scenario. Preparing the report. This is the structure. Or you can say minimum items that are required to be added or required to be there in the report. So these are the basic elements. You can have more, not an issue, but this is the basic element I'm talking about, minimum. A title, addressee, introduction paragraph, that is the pro forma financial information, source of the unadjusted, period covered or date, reference to the applicable criteria. Okay. That responsible party, basically it's the management, is responsible for compiling the pro forma financial information. Then the description of the practitioner's responsibility, that to express an opinion whether they have been compiled as per the applicable criteria. Second, practitioner is not responsible for updating, reissuing any reports or opinion on the historical financial information. This is very important. Issuing pro forma financial information does not mean that we will issue or restate our previous financial information or financial reports. See this particular paragraph. This report should not be, this particular point, this report should not be in any way construed as a reissuance or redating of any of the prior year audit report issued by us on the financial statements of the company. We have no responsibility to update our report for the events, circumstances occurring after the date of report. Simple. Clear? So this is the very important paragraph that we are required to have in our report. That practitioner is not responsible for updating or reissuing any report on historical financial information, nor the practitioner, okay, has performed an audit or review of the financial information. See, if the source of the unadjusted financial information is unaudited, I have to specify that in the source. The source, it can be audited, it can be unaudited. Perfectly fine. Am I required to audit the unaudited, unadjusted financial information? Answer is no. My role is to report on the extraction, not whether the unaudited, unadjusted, unaudited financial information is appropriate or not. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt till now? Okay. So then once we issue this statement in the report, once we add this statement in the report, then we need to provide the purpose of the pro forma financial information. What is the purpose? Why we want to have this pro forma financial information? For what use this is prepared? Okay. And accordingly, the practitioner does not provide any assurance that the actual outcome of the event or transaction at the date would have been presented. Means here we are just trying to give a picture that if that transaction happened at the earlier date, what would have been the impact. That does not mean that we are giving the assurance of the actual outcome of the event. It is not the assurance, it is kind of an illustration. Understand? So this is the difference between the adjustment purpose. Adjustment purpose is to illustrate the impact if that transaction would have happened earlier. But is it an assurance of the actual outcome? Answer is no. Then that the performance of this particular engagement was as per SAE 3240, okay, which requires a practitioner to perform procedures to obtain reasonable assurance. Simple thing. Then the opinion part, the statement part, that a reasonable assurance engagement to report on this is whatever it is. Okay. Sorry. Then about a reasonable assurance engagement. What is a reasonable assurance engagement? You provide that. Okay. And you provide about the procedures selected depending upon the practitioner judgment, understanding of the entity. The engagement involves evaluating overall presentation, a simple statement to make reader understand that, okay, what is practitioner's responsibility and what practitioner has done in this particular scenario. Then the opinion, main part. The pro forma financial information has been complied in all material respect, or the pro forma financial information has been properly complied on the basis stated. Unless there's just different wordings prescribed by law. If law prescribed different wording, then use that. Otherwise, this wording or similar something. Okay. If law prescribes some different wording, then you need to use that wording for the purpose of your opinion. Okay. See, I'll just give an example over here. How it shows that has been prepared in all accordance with the Act, SEBI, ICDR regulation and the guidance note. You can understand this is nothing but the criteria. Okay. Has been preferred after incorporating adjustment in respect of material error, regrouping, reclassification, retrospectively to reflect the same accounting treatment as per the accounting policies at the end for the 3 months interim this for all reporting periods. Okay. So all these things you specify in your opinion. And then signature, date, and basically you have membership number, FRN, UDIN. So this is how you prepare a report for the compilation of a pro forma financial information engagement. Any doubt? Any doubt on any of the area that we have discussed in SAE 3240? Sorry, 3420. Okay. If no doubts, let's take the questions on 3402 and 3420 both. Okay. The purpose now we will be focusing more onto the answering the question from the perspective of the exam. Okay. So let me share. Okay. Let me read the question for you. There is some issue. Just a minute. Sorry, there is some technical glitch. Just a minute.
Secure Data Solutions Limited, Secure Data, provides complex data center hosting and transaction processing services to several major banks and financial institutions, user entities. The controls at Secure Data are integral to the user entity's financial reporting. MSBGM and Associates, a firm of chartered accountants, has been engaged by Secure Data to conduct an assurance engagement and issue a type to report in accordance with SA 3402, Assurance Reports on Controls at a Service Organization, for the period 1st April 2024 to 31st March 2025. The engagement partner at BGM and Associates has completed all the necessary audit procedures, including tests of the operating effectiveness of controls, and is now in the process of drafting the final assurance report. As the engagement partner, you are required to ensure the report is complete and compliant with the standard. Elucidate the basic elements that must be included in the service auditor's assurance report, in accordance with SA 3402.
Pretty much straightforward question. There is nothing difficult in this. Take a minute, read the question again, and then try to answer for this particular question. Nothing difficult. Take a minute, read the question again. Okay, now tell me, what do you think are the basic elements that must be included in the service auditor's assurance report? So the question is to elucidate the basic element that must be included in the service auditor's assurance report. Anyone?
So in the type two, we are giving that the effectiveness of the control. So first we will design the scope of it and that organization. What are the organizational responsibilities with respect to this service auditor issued report, and the responsibilities with respect to the service auditors. What are the responsibilities? And also that is there any limitation or opinion? In opinion we will say how the description fairly presented or not, or whether that control objectives is described as suitably designed or not. Like that, in the opinion paragraph we will discuss about that control objective, how it is tested, what is the actual. Then we will say the desktop controls, how the control and the intended user, all this content we will incorporate in the report. And also the place of signature and date and the firm registration number, like that, sir.
Yes, very good. Anyone else would like to add to this thing to answer? Or any area do you think we should include in the report? Okay, so basically, in order to provide the answer to this question, let's go to the study material pack. The clear-cut answer to the particular question is nothing but this particular part of your study material, 3.5 reporting. Okay, so these are the basic minimum features that you should include in your report. Title, addressee, now identification of service organization's description. Okay, if there is not covered out of the scope, then out of scope description. If description covers complementary user entity control, then if it covers the sub-service organization and the activities performed by the sub-service organization, then that activity. Okay, then identification of the criteria, a statement that the type 2 report is only for, or if we are doing the testing, if we are providing, it is only for the user entity and user auditor. So we are talking about use. Then statement is management responsibility, a statement of the auditor's responsibility, then statement on SAE, then you have a summary of the service auditor's procedure. So it is summary of procedures to obtain reasonable assurance and the statement that the service auditor's belief that the evidence obtained is sufficient and provide the basis of the service auditor's opinion. In case of type 1 report, and in case of type 2 report, about the operating effectiveness. So the summary of the procedure and statement, then limitations, then your opinion paragraph, whether it's a type 1 report or type 2 report, and then you have a date, place, signature. So this is the particular report element that you are required to include. Clear? Any doubt?
Here we will incorporate the description of the desktop control as well. Since it's respective the effectiveness of the control, we will specify that controls tested, nature, timing, and the result of that also we have to list it.
Yes. So that is the part which is the annexure to the report. You can use that as an attachment of to your report. Okay. Let's go back to the question again now. So our question was elucidate the basic elements that must be included in the service auditor's assurance report and the type 2 report. So we understood now what are the basic elements in the service auditor's report. We are required to include that. So again, the answer also contains the same thing: title, address, identification criteria, intended users, responsibility, auditor responsibility, compliance, summary of procedure, limitation, then opinion, date, description of tested controls, date, signature, place. This is what is required to be there in your answer. Simple. Okay. Let's go to the second question that I want to have for on this same topic. This will really help us to understand the topic.
Paycor Solutions Limited. Paycor provides payroll processing services to several listed companies. MSJKP and Associates, chartered accountants, were engaged by Paycor to conduct an assurance engagement and issue a Type 2 report under SAE 3402 for the financial year 2024-25.
What a correction. Wait, I think there is again some issue.
The engagement partner, CA. Jatin, completed the audit and drafted the assurance report. As part of your firm's internal quality review, you are examining the following excerpt from the draft opinion paragraph and intended user paragraph. Our opinion.
It is stuck, getting stuck.
In our opinion, the accompanying description of Paycor's payroll system gives a satisfactory overview of the system as designed and implemented throughout the period. The controls stated in the description were adequate to achieve the related control objectives stated in the description, and the controls functioned as intended throughout the period. Intended use of this report. This report is prepared for the general use of all stakeholders, investors, and potential clients of Paycor Solutions Limited to demonstrate the effectiveness of its internal controls. As the quality control reviewer, identify and explain the deficiencies in the wording of the above draft report with reference to the mandatory content requirements of SAE 3402, assurance reports on controls at a service organization.
Basically, in this question, there is a report part which is drafted. If you see our opinion part, this is the report part. A draft of a particular of the report. Okay, part of a report. Read this part and then tell me with respect to the entire scenario, do you think it is appropriate? If not, then what should have been changed in that? Okay, read, take a minute, and then tell me what do you think should be the appropriate way to draft it.
It does not include the words operating effectiveness because it is a type 2 report. And in addition, it is not intended for stakeholders, investors, and potential clients.
Okay.
Sir, in the opinion paragraph, they stated like the accompanying description, payroll system gives a satisfactory overview of the system designed and implemented throughout the period. The control stated the description were adequate and this is not appropriate wording. The wording should be that the description fairly presented as designed and implemented throughout the period. That has to be there. And with respect to control, the control related to the control objective stated in the description suitably designed throughout the period of time, which means the period, and control also tested, and the reasonable assurance we provided achieved, operated effectively throughout the period. These words are missing from this on the opinion side. The intended use of this report, it talks about that this report is prepared for the general use. It's not a general use actually. Which means the report, the word like it's a general use of the all stakeholders, investor and potential clients of so and so, to demonstrate the effectiveness of the internal controls. This is not the appropriate. See, the wording should be the report is description of test of control. We talks about the test of control only. If the intended user only the customer, so see, they need to specify the organization. That name we need to mention, and the system and sufficient understanding to consider it, and included all the information and operating effectively. The risk of material misstatement of the customer's financial statement. That is what the wording should be properly mentioned in it. So as far as the conclusion, which means that it is not the qualitative details is not reported as per the SAE 3402.
Absolutely correct. Very good. See, when I talk about the wordings of the opinion, let's go back and see the wordings of the opinion part in the study material. So what was the opinion we are giving? We are giving, in case of the type 2 report, that the description fairly presents. So this is the wording. Fairly presents the service organization systems that have been designed and implemented throughout the period or at a specified date. Then second thing is, the controls related to the controls objectives were suitably designed. So fairly presented, suitably designed, and then operating effectiveness part. Now in our case, what is the scenario? Here they are issuing a type 2 report where they are saying the system gives a satisfactory overview. Are we required to report on satisfactory overview or fairly presents the description of the system implemented throughout the period? So this wording that the payroll system gives a satisfactory overview, sorry, it is wrong. It should not be satisfactory overview. No. It should be that the description of the systems fairly presents the systems that designed and implemented throughout the period. Second, the controls stated in the description, or the controls related to the controls objectives should be there. Okay, so there should be more to it. Control related to the control objective. Okay, in the description were adequate to achieve the related control objectives. Now this is something problem. Adequate to achieve the related controls objectives. Now, this is not the targeted wordings or not the opinion appropriate wordings. Am I required to report adequate to achieve?
No. They were description were suitably designed throughout the period. That has to be reported.
Design is the word instead of adequate to achieve. And controls functioned as intended throughout the period. No, they were operating effectively. So these wordings are not appropriate in this scenario. So controls functions as intended, no. So again, intended use. The report is prepared for the general use. No, it has to be specific. Remember the first part we discussed. If it is not the specific, then it will be outside the purview of SAE 3402. It has to be specific, and the end use of the report is done by the user entity's auditor, user auditor. You have to provide that this report is for the user entity and user auditor, Please, others, stay away from this report or do not refer to this report. If you prepare for the general use, it is not covered by this standard. No. As a result, this wording is also not appropriate. The entire opinion part is incorrect as per the requirements of the standard. Instead, what should be the scenario is, as I said, fairly presented, suitably designed, operated effectively, intended users only for the management of the service organization, user entity, and their auditors who have sufficient understanding of the context, not for the general use. As a result, the wordings are not appropriate. There's a material deficiency and non-compliance with the 3402. Simple. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt? If no doubt, let's take one more one more question on the similar line, on the similar standard. Very good question. Okay.
Zenlogix Private Limited. Zenlogix is a large third-party logistics 3PL provider that offers comprehensive warehousing and inventory management services to numerous pharmaceutical companies, user entities. For these user entities, the inventory held at Zenlogix's warehouse is a highly material asset in their financial statements.
Why it is studying?
The management of Zenlogix engages MS, RGM, and Associates, chartered accountants, to conduct an assurance engagement and issue a type to report under SAE 3402 for the financial year 2024-25. During the engagement acceptance phase, the management of Zenlogix provides a description of the system to be covered by the report. The description includes control objectives and controls related to receiving of goods from manufacturers, dispatch, shipping of goods to distributors based on client instructions. However, the engagement partner of RGM and Associates notes that the description explicitly excludes all control objectives and controls related to the physical safeguarding of inventory, perpetual inventory counts, and controls over management of expired or damaged stock. Zenlogix's management argues that these are internal operational matters and should be outside the scope of the report. The engagement partner is concerned that a report with such a limited scope will not be useful to the pharmaceutical companies and their statutory auditors. Advise MS, RGM, and Associates on the appropriate course of action with reference to SAE 3402.
Okay, so the entire question is on the description part. Read the question again thoroughly with the description, what is required to be included, what is included, and then try to answer. So take a minute, read the question, and then try to answer. Okay, now tell me, what is the problem over here? And what should be the appropriate course of action for RGM and associates? Tell me, what is the appropriate course of action with reference to SAE 3402 in this particular scenario? Anyone?
Sir, in this case, the description of the system, they covered in the report, they provided to the, including the control objective, receiving the goods and dispatching. Otherwise,
Hmm.
the physical safeguard is inventory, perpetual inventory count, and other control of the expired damage stock. But the management argues that this is not internal things, it is not to be looked into that by the statutory auditor. They are giving the limitation out of it. The thing is
Hmm.
that the primary objective of the auditor with respect to 3402 is that then he has to get the evidence for that, how that design and system they control or described, and whether it is a reasonable or not, that reasonably drafted, reasonably executed, or whether it is a control in place, all these things. The auditor is a primary responsible to check that out. But here, since the limitation, the basic criteria itself is not appropriately is defined and control is not created is effectively, so that the auditor means the practitioner can definitely look for that. They can ask the service organization to change, modify it appropriately. Otherwise, he can go for withdrawal if the law is permitting.
Okay,
Otherwise, he can
very
get
good.
legal advice also.
Yes, very good. See, at the time of the acceptance of the engagement, we read something, we understood something. Now let's go back and see once again. So when we were talking about accepting the engagement, we understood that the criteria applied by the service organization to prepare the description should be suitable. Okay, so that it will not be, it will not create a limited, that like it should not be at the end useful, or rather useless for the user entity or user auditor. Now if let's say they are taking a criteria which is so small, or the scope of which is limited, causing that the entire description being useless for the service, like user entity and user auditor, then in that case, again, I should not accept that particular engagement. So acceptance, first of all, you need to determine whether the criteria applied for the purpose of preparing the description is appropriate or not, whether the criteria is suitable, or is it so limited that it is making the entire description, okay, unlikely to be useful for the user entities and their auditors. If that is the case, then in that case I should not accept the engagement at all. So it has to be seen before accepting the engagement. Similarly, in our question, okay, here, see, the physical safeguard of the inventory, perpetual inventory counts, and control over management expired or damaged stock is not provided. Now, as per the engagement partner, they see that, okay, the limited scope will not be useful to the pharmaceutical companies and their statutory auditor. Means the limited scope is unlikely to be useful. As a result, the appropriate course of action is I should not accept this engagement. This is during the engagement acceptance phase. Okay. So at this particular phase itself, I should deny and should not accept from the engagement. Clear? So if I go to the answer, similarly, Like if it is so limited that is unlikely to be useful for the user entities and their auditors, then you should not accept. As a result, here it is unlikely to be useful, that we understood, to their auditors. And we should not accept the engagement unless and until they modify. And you need to communicate this deficiency to the management. Like the description is not appropriate. And if they refuse to include these relevant controls, decline the engagement. Simple. Do not accept. Clear? Any doubt?
Clear, sir.
Okay. If no doubts, let me take one more question on SAE 3420. Again, very good question. Pretty much easy, straightforward, nothing difficult over here.
Apex Industries Limited. Apex, a large listed manufacturing company, is planning a significant restructuring. The company has two major divisions, steel and textiles. On 15th May 2025, after its financial year end of 31st March 2025, the board of directors approved a plan to demerge the entire textiles division into a new, separate company.
Okay.
To finance the expansion of its remaining steel division, Apex is issuing a rights issue, and a prospectus is being prepared. The management of Apex believes it is crucial to show investors what the company's financial position and performance would have looked like without the textiles division. They have prepared a set of financial statements based on the audited results for the year ended 31st March 2025, but with adjustments to remove all assets, liabilities, income, and expenses related to the demerged textiles division. This statement is labeled in the prospectus as Adjusted Financials for Continuing Operations. MS RKV and Associates, Chartered Accountants, are engaged to report on this financial information for inclusion in the prospectus. A new member of the engagement team is confused about how to classify this information. As the engagement partner, explain the term pro forma financial information as defined in SAE 3420 and advise whether the adjusted financials prepared by Apex Limited fall within this definition.
Pretty straightforward. We have to just provide what is the definition of the adjusted financial information, like the process of the compilation, and whether this particular scenario is a pro forma financial information or not. So what is the definition of adjusted financial information? Anyone? What is the definition of the adjusted financial information?
Sir, adjusted financial financial information, from the unadjusted financial information, we will adjust that the information which is needed to be adjusted. Then it will be called the adjusted financial information.
Yes. So if I talk about a question and answer is simple. When I talk about explain the term pro forma financial information, it is same like what we discussed. Pro forma financial information is nothing but you have the unadjusted financial information. You consider the event or transaction and their impact, and you apply the pro forma adjustment to the unadjusted financial information to get the pro forma financial information. So this is pro forma financial information's definition that we understood. Remember, we discussed PPFI is nothing but unadjusted financial information plus adjustment. That's it. That's the definition of pro forma financial information. Now, these adjusted financials for continuing operation, is this a PFFI? So in the question, they have asked whether this adjusted financial for continuing operation is a PFFI, that is a pro forma financial information.
No, sir, it is not. They actually the adjustment to remove the all asset liability and expenses related to demerged textile division. This statement is labeled the prospectus as adjusted financial for continuing operation. See, actually they removed everything, but they are stating that it is a continuing operation, which is not appropriate.
See, what is the purpose of pro forma financial information? Okay, what they are doing is, there are two companies, two divisions, steel and textile. Textile, now there is going to be a new separate company on 15th May that was approved. Now, what they are doing is, for a right issue, again, now this is for the prospectus. Remember, this is for the prospectus, right issue. Management believes that it would be appropriate if they show the performance without the textile division, which is going to be a separate company, because that got approval on the 15 May 2025 after the financial information got finalized for the financial year. And they prepared a set of financial statement based on audited results of 31st March, but with an adjustment to remove all assets, liabilities, income, expenses, okay, to demonstrate the impact of a demerger. This is done to demonstrate the impact of demerger. Now, this particular adjusted financials for continuing operation is a PFFI. Are you getting the point? Because here we are taking a future event and applying or illustrating its impact on the past financial statement. Simple. Any doubt with this?
No, sir.
Straightforward, like it is the pro forma financial information. Classic example. Okay, if no doubts, I have a 5 quick MCQs for you guys that will serve as a quick revision. I want you to answer as quickly as possible. Okay, so let's start. SAE 3402, assurance reports on controls, is specific to control set. These are the options.
Service organization.
Very good. Service organization.
Service organization.
SAE 3420, provide assurance on compilation of
Pro forma financial.
Very good. Pro forma financial information. Yes, Nia, very good. Which report under SAE 3402 includes an opinion on the operating effectiveness of the control?
Type 2.
Yes, very good. Type 2. An assurance report under SAE 3420 is most commonly included in
Prospectus.
Very good. A type 1 report under SAE 3402 provides assurance only on the
design and implementation.
Very good. Design and implementation, not operating effectiveness, because it is covered by the type 2. Very good, Nia. So that was our chapter number 11. Okay, where we covered SAE 3400 in the previous session, 3402 and 3420 in the current session. Any doubt with respect to any of the part of chapter number 11? Any doubt? No? Okay. If no doubts, then I would like to keep the session till here. Guys, please read the chapters and please practice more on the questions. So we are covering the questions over here for your understanding, but you have to keep a writing practice of these questions. Reading is required, but along with the reading, writing is also required. So please make sure you have a writing practice of the answer. Okay. If no further doubts, then thank you guys. Thank you for participating in today's session. I will see you next. Thank you. Yes.
मैं तो बोल ही नहीं पाई हर्षद।
अच्छा मैम आपका मैसेज आया नहीं मेरे को। ओके
हाँ
जी।
एक सेकंड, बस एक सेकंड।
So guys, we have ma'am with us. Just a minute. We have ma'am with us.
Yeah,
Good
one
evening,
second.
ma'am.
Good evening, students. Good evening, students.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hope you are enjoying the session.
Yes, ma'am.
Please feel free to share your feedback if you have any. And you must be knowing that we have commenced our fortnight program also, and we will be having our session on 15th of November on auditing subject, right? Tomorrow is for AFM, and on 15th we are having on CA final paper 3, Advanced Auditing Assurance and Professional Ethics, wherein we will be interacting with you for the success and much more about getting successful, being successful, right? So do not forget to attend the same, and please share your feedback. And you all are aware that these special newly added chapters are very important for examination point of view. So please prepare thoroughly, and in case if you find any difficulty, please feel free to contact us. I thank Harshad sir and support team, BOS team, and all the students who have who are listening carefully, and I hope you are preparing your notes also. So with this, thank you everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Ji.